Greetings, greetings, family. Sista Shanice in the house, welcoming you to another Wednesday evening show. We are continuing our series, African History Hidden in Plain Sight. And wow, what an awesome, fantastic, blacktastic show I have lined up for you today. So yeah, come through the door, let everybody know that we're live so that we can start the show promptly and without too much delay. So what's this new message over here? Moderation. Okay, it's telling me about a moderator. I don't have a moderator. I just fly solo, single-handedly. So, you know, I'm script writer, I'm producer, technician, engineer, presenter. I'm doing the whole works, and also sending out the link in the background, letting people know that we are indeed live. And wow, what a privilege, as always, it is to be with you here today. It's been a manic day today. I have visitors visiting, and you know, I'm trying to be the hostess with the mostess, making sure that, you know, everybody's fine, everybody's having a real good time, and you know, just managed to get in so that I could start on time at 7 o'clock. So I certainly don't take your participation and your presence here for granted. Not at all. It's an honor, always an honor to be able to deliver to you. So as you come through the door, please do let me know that you're in the house and that you're rearing to go, because I certainly am. Today's topic is going to be focusing on Kemet. Yes, we've been journeying around the world, and it's been an incredible journey. Well, we haven't done the whole world. I mean, we've done Asia, we've done the Americas. Where else have we done? You know, we've been in the so-called Middle East, which is just Northeast Africa. And we've been having an amazing journey identifying the African presence, the presence of our ancestors and where they've been. Oh, I should have got a fan because I'm already feeling the heat. So family, come through the door, leave me a message in the chat, let me know that you're here, let me know that you know, you are rearing to go so that I can you know, get the show started. Okay, I'm trying to do something here. It's not going quite right. That's okay. But let me just let everybody know that we are live. We are live. That's my message that I want to send out to family and friends so that they can hook us up. And please do help me to let the family know that we are live as well by sharing the live link in your groups. So if you belong to any WhatsApp groups, if you, you know, got family and friends who are linked, please do send them the information so that they can join us here as well. So let me go over to my phone just to make sure that I'm coming through okay. And also to see if I've got any messages. All right, where am I? Okay, that's going to take a moment to go through because it always takes a while when there's a lot going on in the background. It just takes that little bit of an extra time. Okay, so I think I can see some people in the chat. Now that if I minimize this, I'll be able to see behind the chat and see who we got. We've got Sister Betty in the house. Rise up, beloved. Great to have you in the house. Yes, indeed. I haven't, let's close that window there so that, yes, wonderful. We've got our RB reviews in the house. Welcome, RB Reviews. Great to have you in the house. Saying hello, Shanice, and Betty saying hotep. Someone's giving me some hearts. Thank you so much. We got Kwame Aboje in the house. Rise up, Brother Kwame Aboje. He's picking up myself. That's it, Mama Adowa. That's the name I was trying to remember. Hotep. my beloved brothers and sisters in the house. Oh, it's always a joy to be able to come before you, my wonderful, wonderful audience. So I'm on my phone here and I can see that I'm live. I can see messages are coming through, which is great. I'm just going to be sending off some of the links so that people can click the link and come on, because everyone always tells me how challenging and difficult it is, to find my links. And, I want to make sure that the family have the opportunity to join me should they wish to do so. So today we're going to be going into Kemet. Some call it Egypt. Egypt is, the new name for that region in Africa that we know as Kemet. And this is, the epicenter of civilization. And I'm going to be, proving that to you in the show today, because, they try to claim that Africa was uncivilized, don't they? They try and claim that, had it not been for the Europeans, we'd be still in the dark ages, swinging in the trees, whatever. But we have been journeying, family, across the continents. We've been to the continent of Asia, and we have uncovered and we have shown so much evidence of the Black presence in Asia, from Asia Minor to Asia Major, from all over Asia. India, China, Japan, we've been in Cambodia, Vietnam, and there's evidence of the Black presence in and their ancient civilizations all over Asia. Yes, our African ancestors, they traveled the globe, and wherever they went, they brought their culture, they brought their traditions with them. And because of the culture and the traditions of our ancient ancestors, that we've been looking at, once you get to recognize, the stone masonry of our ancestors, the artistic creativity of our ancestors, and how we portrayed ourselves through our art, through in stone and monuments and statues and ornaments. Once you start to see, our ancestors in the ancient world and how they portrayed themselves, you will recognize the works of your ancestors anywhere you go in the world. And like I said, we've been looking at the monuments in Asia, we've been looking at monuments in Iran, in Afghanistan, the ancient Persia, Susa, the city of Susa. We've been looking at the Elamites and the African presence in Elam. We have been globetrotting, and it's been a phenomenal journey. And we went over from Asia, didn't we? And we went into the Americas as well. And we were looking at the evidence of the African presence in the Americas from ancient times. When we talk about ancient times, we're talking about over 100,000 years ago in some regions of the world, 50,000 years ago in other regions of the world. And family, the great news is that you can actually go back over some of these presentations that I have been presenting and see for yourself. See for yourself, family, the evidence. And I look forward to your comments as well. Yeah, please do go in and comment and let me know what your thoughts, views, and opinions are. Quite often I will tell you the source as well of the information that I'm presenting. I'll tell you what books I get the information from. I'll tell you what museums the artifacts are in, should you want to go to the museums and look there for yourself. I'll tell you the land where I am at, the regions where I'm looking at the evidence of our ancestors, so that you can do the check-in for yourself, yeah? Because I'm doing my research, but you might be able to do even better research, and you might uncover some information that I've missed. It might be in some area I've got something a little bit twisted. If that's the case and you want to point me in the right direction or bring some clarification, then please do so. Each one teach one. You don't know how it go already. And so we've got so much history that's hidden in plain sight. We're actually on episode 14 now. And we are going to be, as I said, looking in the region that they call Egypt. But in ancient times, we called that region Kemet. And so that's what we're going to be calling that region today, because I know, you, my wonderful audience, prefer if I refer to that region as Kemet, because, we know the etymology of the word, do you not? So as you come through the door, I've got a question that I wanted to ask you as well, actually, talking about the etymology of the word. There are those family, the historians, the archaeologists, the anthropologists, and the Egyptologists and the like, who are trying to steal our history. Yeah, and they claim that Kemet, spelled Khemet or Kemet, however they spell it. They claim that Kemet means, we know that it means black land. Okay, there's that. The etymology of the word Kemet means black land. But what they say is that our Asian ancestors, when they called the region Kemet, they were referring to the rich soil, that the rich, dark, fertile soil that's left behind by the Nile River after its annual flood. And they called it the Black Land because of that. And that's opposed to it being called, the Red Land or the desert or anything like that. And as far as they're concerned, certainly not because of the black faces of the original people of the land. But I want to know, in the chat, please, what's your view? What do you think our ancestors meant when they called the region Kemet? What did it signify? Did it signify the fertile soil after the annual flooding, or did it signify the complexion of the indigenous people? What are your views? Let me see where you're at with your views, thoughts, and opinions on this one, family. Why did our ancestors call the region Kemet? The etymology of the word Kemet, as we know, derives from the ancient word Kem, which means black. And we have had in previous episodes as well, similarly, where we've looked at the etymology of the word, and again, the ancients in the etymology of the word were saying that it means, like Sudan means the black land, I'd have to refer to my notes to get or get all the others, but I think, there were a number of lands where our ancestors were, and they used the etymology of the words that they used in their language basically meant black land or black-headed people, So were they calling themselves black-headed people because the soil was black, or black land because the soil was black? Or were they calling it, black land because the inhabitants were black and that's the way they described themselves? What are your thoughts and opinions on that? Let me know in the chat. I'm just sending out a couple more posts, and I'm going to go to the chat, and I'd really like to know what your thoughts are on that. Okay, so why did our ancestors call Kemet the Black Land? Remember, we are the indigenous people of that region, even though there are those archaeologists, anthropologists, and all the rest who don't want to give us that credit. It is the case that we are the indigenous people of the land. And is that why they called it the Black Land? Let me know what your thoughts are. Okay, I'm going to just do one more post. There's a couple of people, let me just send it to a couple of people who do like to tune in when they get the link. And so let me just quickly do that. Yeah, and then I'll go back to the chat. Ah, yes, I got some comments in the chat. Thank you so much. Absolutely fantastic. Coming to the chat now. Yes, rise up, rise up. Brother Kwame Oboje, as always, he says, yes, the African presence of the world. Yes, indeed. Ashe to that as well. Sister Adawa, agree with you on that. Brother Kwame says that Kemet was pro Baba Imhotep. Pro Baba Imhotep. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, sir. Rise up, rise up. Sister Karen's in the house. She said episode 14. That's right. Today is episode 14. And oh, Sister Betty, rise up, high five. She says, I look forward to every episode. It makes the research and the studying worthwhile. Thank you so, so much. And Brother Kwame says that Kemet, the origins of Africans in Al-Kabalan. Yes, indeed. And we got Karen in the house. Another Karen in the house who's bigging up the B1 family, the Black First family, the beautiful First family. Yes, indeed. Rise up, rise up. Thank you. Karen says, these hidden in the shadows lessons are blacktastic. Honor, honor. Thank you so, so much. And Sister Ada was saying that the people first and the black gold soil, the soil, yeah, black gold. All right, the people first and the soil, black gold. Oh, beautiful. The original black land, says Brother Kwame Oboje. Yes, they called it Kemet because it was the original black lands. And Karen says that she shared it on Facebook. Thank you so much for sharing it on Facebook for me. If all of you could do that, more love, more strength. Brother Thomas is saying, oh, hi, Sister Shanice, why did the ancient Kemetians build so many temples? Is it because of religion? Oh, wonderful, wonderful. You know, and this is what, you know, anthropologists do. You know, they sit down and they theorize, they analyze, you know, they try and decipher the writing, they try to get into the minds of our ancestors, they try and get into their lifestyle, their culture, they get an understanding of the traditions, they, you know, they study us and our ancients to get to a position where they make that kind of educated guess. And then once they've made that educated guess, they put it down, you know, in books. And as far as they're concerned, that is it. What do I think? Why did the ancient Kemetians build so many temples? Is it because of religion? I think we're very spiritual as a people. And, you know, I've seen that throughout the entirety of our history. We've always had a spiritual connection to nature or to the source, you know, that we can call various different names, you know, and in terms of the animal kingdom, the marine life, we see, you know, nature in those creatures, and we've used creatures as symbolisms as well throughout our history. And so on the temples and on the walls, you might see a bull, you might see the cobra, you might see, you know, a dog's head. You can see all, you know, you can see our love and our connection to nature, the animal kingdom of the world, you know, through our spiritual eye. Some might call it religion, and, you know, religiosity does come into it, I suppose, when it gets dogmatic. But on the whole, you know, we are a very spiritual people. And, you know, wherever we have been in the world, you know, we have taken our spiritual practices with us. And as I said, we can see that across the globe, everywhere that we've gone. And I might do a special session, Brother Thomas, where we look at religion, you know, and spirituality in the Asian world. And if you have some thoughts, family, that you want to add about, you know, in response to Thomas's question, please do go ahead and drop your thoughts and views in the chat as well. Thank you so, so much. Okay, right. I think I've done posting. I think those key people who have asked me to send a post I think they should all have that now. So brilliant, brilliant. They've got the opportunity to join us if they are able to do so. Please do give me a thumbs up. Everybody in the house, please do give me a thumbs up. Would much appreciate love that. Thank you, Sister Karen. I love Wednesdays too. That's why, you know, I put everything aside just to be here. And I'm up 3 o'clock in the morning, which is my quiet time to do my research, so that I make sure I've got something interesting in my presentations to bring to you, my wonderful, wonderful, beautiful family. Yes, yes. Aha. Thank you so, so much. Okay, we respect the creator. Yes, says Sister Adwa. Mama Adwa says we respect the creator. So much so, that, we symbolize the greatness of our creator, in a multiplicity of ways, through nature itself, through the vegetation, the animal kingdom, the marine life, in the temples that we build. We are always, at one with nature and giving thanks to nature itself. And so, yeah, it's a spiritual connection. And not all species have that spiritual connection, but we certainly do. And we take it with us wherever we are. Okay, are we ready to rock and roll? Let's start today's presentation, shall we? Let me get into Zoom and share screen. Okay, let me minimize this in the background so that doesn't get in the way of things. And let me quit WhatsApp, because it has a way of just ringing and popping up when it's not supposed to do so. Oh, before I go into the presentation, you can see my book here, my most recent book, Hidden in the Shadows of Ancient Britain, an Erased African History Restored. If you'd like to support my works, rather, please do get a copy of my book from Amazon. I look forward to sharing more of the research that I've been doing with you through the pages in this book. And if you have a particular interest in Britain, either because you're British, or you're part of one of the British colonies, or you're American, and maybe don't know that your ancestors actually came from England, Ireland, Scotland, or Wales, if you have a connection to Britain and you're interested in Black British history, and if you think that we only arrived in Britain during the Windrush era, or during World War I or World War II, as soldiers for the British Empire, then you're going to be shocked when you read this book and discover that we have been in Britain for at least 44,000 years, and that we are the original indigenous people of Britain. When I say we, I mean Africans. Yes, indeed, family. Wow. So get that book and read it, because at some point I would really love to have a book discussion so that we can come together and have a conversation about the various chapters in the book. I did that once before and it was phenomenal. It was brilliant. We read the chapters and we talked about it. We had the conversations. It's like a book reading club, and it's great. It's great reading together. I'd love to do that again. So make sure that you get your copy, family, so that you can be part of the conversation that we're going to be having about this history of ours in Britain that they tried to erase. Okay, all right. So let's try and get this screen lined up appropriately. Yeah, it's on the right one there. Let's see, let's share. I don't have any sound today, so I don't need to worry about that one. No, that's not the setup that I want. Let's try it again. Let's stop share and try again. Well, I always have to do this too, so it just doesn't do it. I want it to do. Okay, let's try this one. Okay, let's see if this is the one. Uh, where, what screen have I got here? No, it hasn't done it again. Okay, don't worry, we'll get there in a moment or two. Hopefully third time lucky. Right, let's go over to advanced and get the right portion. Let's try this time. See if it's got the right screen. Yeah. Oh, oops, dear, oh dear. Get rid of that. Okay, let's go to slideshow and get into presenter's view. And then we are going to be good to go. Go on, slideshow. Yeah, presenter's view. There we go. Right, I'm just going to check on the screen to see if it's coming up correctly before I start sailing away. Yes, family. Betty says all of the English speakers in the world had dealings with these colonizers for real. It was unbelievable. When you think of the heights that we were at in terms of our ancient civilizations, and because of our nature, we've really got to examine ourselves, and we've really got to think about how it was that we allowed, these minority groups to come in and just completely take over the world and run away with it. When, we were the original people of every continent and we had such great civilizations. Karen says, these lessons are a mind trip. We are so grateful for your research work. Thank you so, so much. Angel says, I believe the temples were like healing pyramids. Visiting some temples, when I put my hand on them, I felt them vibrating. Wow. The words of healing came to me. Wow, for those needing it at that time. For real, that resonates with me as well. Angel, welcome to the conversation. That resonates with me. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so the title of today's presentation, family, is Kemet, where civilization was perfected. Yes, that's where we're going. So we're on episode 14 now. It's Wednesday, the 29th of April. Thank you so, so much for joining me throughout this series. I'm absolutely honored to have your presence, and thanks in advance for sharing, subscribing, and being part of the family. So Kemet, as I said, actually means the Black Land. And this is the ancient native name for Egypt, okay? So for those of you watching this and thinking, where's Kemet? Kemet is today's Egypt, yeah? And in my view, our ancestors, when they called it Kemet, the Black Land, were referring to the indigenous people of the land, okay? And Kemet in ancient times was the heart of our civilization. And it actually represents our historic, indigenous, African origins of Egyptian culture. So, we're living in a time today where there are those, unfortunately, who are actually trying to lay claim to our history. They're trying to claim Kemet as their own. And what they tend to do when they want to steal our history is that they change the name of the place. And so they've renamed Kemet Egypt, and they're trying to, change the meaning of the word Kemet as well. And because there's so much rich history there, they can't erase it totally like they've managed to do in so many other parts of the world, and as they are continuing to do. If you remember in episode 13, we were looking at the cultural destruction that's happening up to today, in Sudan, in Afghanistan, in Iran, and even though there's war going on, there's another war that's being waged against us, and that is a war to erase our history, to erase the evidence of our history. And that's why it's so important that we document everything today, because our future generations are not going to be left with very much evidence, because if we rebury, these people will rebury the evidence that we are uncovering and finding out about today. And so we need to write as many books as we can, do as many of these presentations as we can to get the information out there so that, you know, in 200 years, 300 years time, you know, when our future are digging for evidence of their former greatness, they can actually find this knowledge. Yeah, because in my parents' generation, it was just so hard for them to find out the knowledge of their history because, you know, one, they were just so busy trying to survive. And secondly, if they wanted to find the information, they'd have to go into the university libraries or, you know, these obscure places where they kept these ancient books, you know. But now today that we've got access to the information online, let's not take it for granted, okay? Let's do the work to bring the information and the knowledge to our people. And as I said, I'm on episode 14 now. This could have been chapter 14 in my next book, you know, but I know that more of you, I'm likely to reach more of you through these presentations than I am through my books. And for those of you who have got, you know, some of my works in my books that I've done in the book form, thank you so much for the support. I mean, the people, the numbers of people that buy my book, you know, it can't pay, you know, it can't pay for my lifestyle or you know, my bills or anything like that. But what it symbolizes to me when you buy my book is that you appreciate love my works, yeah? And I thank you for those of you who've got my book and appreciate love the works. Okay, so we're going to be returning to the source now, because when we speak about civilization, family, true civilization, what we're actually speaking about is Kemet, okay? And because of the richness of our civilization in that region, this is why we get so many people who don't look like us in the different professions trying to hijack and whitewash our African history and, you know, give it new names and whitewash the characters. We see it in Hollywood on a daily basis, yeah, because our high culture in that region was not only defined by our achievements in isolation, but it was part of a global advanced civilization in the ancient world. And, you know, we've seen fragments of that on the other continents that we've been focusing on over the last 13 and today 14 episodes. But, you know, Kemet really was the epicenter that was unifying the other great civilizations that existed at that time. And what we have to remember is that what we're going to see in the presentation today, I've got a mosquito in here biting my foot. Right, so what we're going to see in the presentation today is evidence of, boy, a level of art that we haven't even reached today. Engineering skills, science, and governance of a people. And these weren't even separate disciplines in our ancient world. They were, you know, expressed in a way that was combined and just elevated our ancient cities, kingdoms, and empires. And you will be able to see as well in the presentation that we had order, we had balance, we had harmony, you know, the Mahat spirituality. And this wasn't accidental. This was by design, because in Kemet, where we've got evidence of so many stone monuments up and down the land, it wasn't just about stone, you know, it was what the stones represented. It's what those statues and those monuments represented. And this was happening as well, way ahead of many other regions, because whilst many were still building materials, you know, in using materials like wood and mud bricks that tended not to have the life that stone had, the Kemetians, they decided that they were going to build in stone for eternity, and others followed after them. And you'll be able to see that because you'll be able to see that this is the epicenter. And the evidence will speak for itself. This was a society that mastered stonemasonry, mastered mathematics, mastered organization, and they had a vision of the highest level. We're talking about our ancestors thousands of years ago. So if we had this level of sophistication back then, should we not have that, be striving towards that level of sophistication today? Yeah, I mean, our ancestors didn't even stop at monument building. Yeah, their creativity extended into the intellectual sphere, into writing, into medicine, into astronomy. It extended into so many fields. This was a society that was actually run by very highly trained scribes, a class of Africans who had knowledge of the 365-day calendar. They were performing complex medical procedures. They were mapping the stars, the cosmos, the heavens with precision. They were building monumental buildings in an alignment with the cosmos. I mean, our ancestors, the level of sophistication and mastery that they had reached back in those days. Family, we need to get there again. We really need to get there again. And you're going to see some evidence of that. And even if it's the smallest object, it could be jewelry, it could be some tools, the artistry, the precision, the materials used, the design, the symbolism that's in everything that we did. Wow, family. We can't take the works of our ancestors for granted. And did I not finish this? Oh, sorry. There's something missing from that. Where's it gone? Okay. Oh, I didn't know I did that. Okay, so after the journeying that we've been doing across the continents, here's a little reminder of some of the ancient monuments that we saw on the journeys. This one here in Cambodia, this one I think was in India, this one in the Americas, this one in Iran, I think that was Iraq or Iran. We've been journeying across the continents. We've been looking at the monuments. We've been looking at the evidence of the facial features, which, just got that big broad nose like mine stamped all over it. And we've been tracing the footsteps of our ancestors, over time. And now we're going to return to the source, the land where, there was so much mastery that was just, shooting out across the rest of the world. And, Kemet was definitely a mastered civilization that had considerable influence in the ancient world, okay? And if we're going to understand what civilization actually became and what it meant, we have to go to where civilization was perfected, and that was in North Africa, yeah? But remember, the civilization came from the south through the central into North Africa. So it's not that it was only North Africa, on the continent of Africa, that was civilized, no. There were ancient civilizations all over the continent of Africa. South Africa, West Africa, East Africa, North Africa. Family, but what we're dealing with are the remnants of what is left. And we're going to be looking at some of the hidden golden treasures of Kemet. And as I said, it's a beautiful time to be doing that because we've got access to, monuments and statues and historical pieces, archaeological discoveries in these museums. Something that, back in the days, if you wanted to see, you would have to actually visit these museums. You'd have to go to Egypt or Turin or to Paris or, wherever they've got our artifacts to be able to see some of these incredible African treasures of the ancient world. But in this episode, I'm going to be bringing their Egyptian museums to you. So hold on, family. We're going for a ride. This is episode 14. And we're going back to the source, and that is Kemet. Some call it Egypt. And it was the epicenter. It was the land where rock was not just cut, but commanded, where entire temples were carved directly into mountains, not built piece by piece, but revealed from within the stone itself. It was as if they were able to make stone just come alive. Yeah, and this is a civilization that, didn't experiment, because the level of sophistication of the work shows me that what I was looking at were people who had actually mastered engineering, mastered symmetry, mastered alignment, masters performances in everything that they did. And so, when we see our people doing exceptionally well, that's because we are exceptional people. And 9 times out of 10, or 9.9 times out of 10, the vast majority of us are punching well below our potential, well below our potential. So when we move forward and we start looking at some of these monuments, we're going to be stepping into the blueprint of a people who understood how to shape the earth itself, the blueprint of a people who were the masters of medicine, engineering, sciences, agriculture, etc., etc. We were the masters of the earth, and we knew how to shape the earth. And I want to just give thanks to our ancient ancestors for leaving evidence of their legacy behind, carved into stone, carved for eternity, so that we could see the greatness of ourselves, in them. So Kemet, wow, the region with the highest concentration of African stone masonry, highest concentration of mining, of treasures and gods. This is the region that we're going in today. These people, wicked people, they fed our parents' generation, a version of history and an image of Kemet that they called Egypt, that they had whitewashed. And, they fed that image primarily through Hollywood, and they gave us an image of ourselves that many of us still hold on to today. And that image that they gave us of ourselves is so traumatic. It's traumatized so many of our people that we see a lot of self-hate today, So that's why getting the true perspective of our history is so important, so that, we're not having to rely on the schooling system or the fooling system to miseducate our children by giving us a whitewashed version of their history, and by feeding us a version of history that suggests that, the entirety of our history revolves around, enslavement. Also, it's really important just to acknowledge those great ones that have gone before that did the works, so that my generation could begin to realize our greatness. And want to rise up Baba, Dr. Clyde Winters, want to rise up Sheikh Anta Diop, John Henry Clark, want to rise up Carter G. Woodson, Chancellor Williams, all those greats, just to name a few, who were opening our eyes, opening the eyes of millions of us as Africans around the world to the fact that Kemet, stroke Egypt, was not originally a white-powered country, as they tried to portray to us and suggest to us that it was, and that, Kemet wasn't in the Middle East at all, but it was actually North Africa. And just imagine these scholars back in, that time had to be arguing all of this, even though it was a fact that Egypt was attached to the continent of Africa and was just North Africa, that it was indeed a black land with black African people who had built civilizations there for thousands of years, tens of possibly hundreds of thousands of years before there was even a white person or Arab person in the region. Wow, wow, wow. And it was during my generation that the cost became, financially possible for so many of us to be able to personally visit Egypt and look at these huge monuments for ourselves, to look at the treasures that our ancestors had left behind for us, their future to see. My parents' generation, they couldn't have afforded those trips. Even in my generation, it's still out of the reach of a lot of people, but I know that thousands of our people have actually gone and seen the evidence firsthand of the greatness of our ancestors. And now we've got this generation that has social media, has the internet, and with due diligence, we're able to visit museums around the world from the comfort of our own home. And we can see the treasures of that our ancestors made with their own hands from the comfort of our own home. And for those of you in the UK, just to let you know that right now, up to the 15th of May, there's actually an exhibition that's happening at Battersea Power Station in London. It's the Ramesses and the Pharaohs Gold exhibition. This is an exhibition that has been touring and hundreds of thousands of people have been to see this exhibition of the works of our ancestors. I think we should be getting a proportion of that in reparations. All that money they're earning off of, looking at the works of our ancestors, we should be getting a percentage of that, about 80% at least, for reparations, but you don't know how it goes. So this exhibition that's happening at London's Battersea Power Station is actually billed as Ramesses and the Pharaohs Gold, a world-class showcase, they say, exploring the life and legacy of Ramesses the Great, featuring over 180 rare artifacts from ancient Egypt, including royal treasures, sacred relics, and the remarkable coffin of Ramesses II. This immersive journey, they said, through iconic sites like Abu Simbel and the Valley of the Kings offer a unique glimpse into a civilization over 3,000 years old. And they're saying, don't miss your chance to experience it in London. Well, family, if you stay with me today, I'm going to take you on a journey and we're going to be stepping into the world of the pharaohs as well. And we're going to be viewing the world of the pharaohs and the ancient world and the brilliance of our African ancestors from the comfort of your home. And I certainly hope that you'll be inspired. I hope you'll be transformed, and I hope you'll be amazed by our ancient past that was just so great, so great. That's why all the other races want to claim it. So, Ramesses. This is from these monuments here are from the Ramessean temple at Luxor. Ramesses II, some call him, he's also known as Ramesses the Great. And he was the third pharaoh of the 19th dynasty. And he lived, Ramesses II is believed to have lived into his 90s. And he led massive military campaigns and actually built more monuments than any other pharaoh. I suppose, by now, family, if you've been watching all of the episodes, you are used to seeing the destruction that, some have been doing to our monuments, and you won't be surprised to see that his nose has been chiseled off there. It certainly appears as though it's been chiseled off to me. But anyway, Ramesses, he was one of the most powerful African rulers of ancient Kemet. And, it's sad to see, really, that someone so powerful, who built so many statues of themselves, these people have gone and, taken the heads off them. No, taken his head off and you'll find the head of one statue in one museum and the head of the other statue in another museum. But, you know, even though we're looking at these images and we can see that, you know, at one time they were complete with their heads, and that these people have tried to defigure them, they've broken off the noses, they've tried to, you know, fragment the evidence of our great ancestors. This is just an interruption in our history and an interruption in our story. The damage, you know, they've tried to damage it, but we can still see, you know, the evidence of the greatness. Look at the size of these monuments. This is someone who's standing on the lap of this statue, this monument of Ramesses II that's been carved into stone. And yeah, the destruction here follows a similar pattern that we've been seeing across Asia, the so-called Middle East, the Americas, you know, from the Buddhas, member of the Burmese civilization. We were looking at Nimrud in Iran and what they did to the monuments there. We was looking at even the museums in Sudan last strong as well, and the destruction in Afghanistan. And now here we are in Egypt looking at the same pattern of destruction that we're seeing, you know, the same story repeating itself, monuments that stood for like thousands of years, surviving time, surviving weather, surviving generations. You know, for the last couple of generations, we've had a set of people whose, you know, intention is to try and claim our history. And if it means defacing the monuments, breaking off the noses, whitewashing them, often deliberately, sometimes, I don't know, maybe accidental, because it's just the total neglect that they have of these ancient pieces, then, you know, this is what we're faced with. And of course, you know, we can't ignore the fact that there have been wars and conquests, and, you know, that comes with, you know, the conquerors bringing their own ideology and imposing their own ideology in regions, which means that they might want to just try and erase what went before, but the same impact is the same. The impact is the same. The broken statues, the shaved off noses, you know, and their effort to try and disrupt the narrative of our history, because they think if they can deface these statues, if they can erase the nose and then later on put a straight nose on it, which, you know, they have been doing, it's in an effort for them to try and remove our past. They want to remove the identity of our ancestors. They want to try and remove the head so that we don't see that it was an African head. And they remove the nose so we don't see the African facial features. If we don't see the African facial features, then we can't give it an African identity. And so that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to remove the African identity from these monuments so that we don't recognize, you know, that it's our history that we're looking at, and that we don't realize the African connection. But here's the truth. Even in this state, even in this state, we can still see the African origin. We can still see from the scale of the remains and the pattern of these monuments that we've been looking at across the globe, that they were indeed, you know, built by our African ancestors. And so the intention of these monuments still remain. They're still speaking to us, and they're still telling us what an advanced African civilization we had, what it looked like. It's telling us that, you know, our African ancestors actually mastered stone science, stone masonry. They mastered sculpturing, mastered, you know, their sculpturing was to such a high standard. They understood, you know, how rock performed, and they were able to build into rock with expectation. If you don't understand it, you can start chiseling away at the rock and trying to create something, and the whole thing would just come tumbling down. But when we see our monuments broken or destroyed, what we're looking at is not just destruction, it's evidence of what those are trying to do to erase our history, but also we can see what's left behind and what has survived for centuries of destruction. Because despite everything, you know, the invasion, the wars, the erasure, the destruction, the change of names, you know, our ancestors won't be silenced, because these monuments are still speaking volumes to us. They could even try and move Egypt out of Africa. Geopolitically, move Egypt out of Africa. Smash up the facial features. Break up our statues. You know, they can do all of this, but it doesn't erase the evidence that it was an African civilization that created all of these statues and monuments from solid rock. Wow, wow, wow. This was really interesting as well. When I started putting some of these huge megalithic monuments from around the world together, I could see a pattern here. I could see that, you know, this is one from Egypt, this one is Afghanistan, and this one's Iran. And these monuments, wherever they were, these huge megalithic monuments represented power. And so, you know, we are looking at ancient societies and our ancient civilization that were very powerful. And this is how they presented that power. One of the ways that they presented to the rest of the world how powerful they were. You know, look at the similarities between these, you know, huge rock-hewn monuments. You know, they'd carved images of themselves in their godly presence, you know, into the rock. And then these would be strategically positioned in each region, albeit, you know, different regions, they'd be strategically positioned at the entrance, say, of these major cities. So, you know, in the entrance to the Egyptian city, or the, you know, cities in Afghanistan or Persia, you know, different region, but the same idea. You're entering a place of power. You know, we're so powerful that we've carved, you know, images of ourselves into these rocks, and a great scale as well. And even though the African features has been damaged on all of them, you know, we know that from the history that these figures originally had African facial features that had been carved into the rock itself. And we're talking about, you know, people back then who saw the power in themselves. Look at some of these images here that have just captured the power of these ancient African Kemetian monuments. You know, on one side here we can see, wow, the grandeur of Ramesses II, you know, at the Abu Simbel. And, you know, we can see that they've taken some of these monument heads off, and they'll be probably on display in the museums or on the tours that they're doing. And, you know, we can see the impact that has happened. And look at this huge head here. This was obviously, you know, on one of these monuments. Look at the size of it. You know, this is what our ancestors were doing and carving directly into the stone, you know. The destruction, though, the human interference, wow, it's just, the scale of it is unimaginable. The effort to try and remove, you know, evidence of the works of our ancestors, to put them into museums, to destroy the evidence, you know, they've gone to enormous lengths, but still, you know, we are able to see the remains of the works of our ancestors, and the enormity of these structures. Wow, wow, wow. you know, and even though they have suffered so much destruction, they still, you know, command um, and portray power. They command respect. They portray power. You know, they're presenting the identity of the people, and it just suggests to you their capability and you know, how powerful they were back in those days. And just imagine that the artisans, the sculptors who would have been chipping away at these rock surfaces, chipping away to create these massive, massive monuments. And we're just so fortunate that we're living in a time where when this hasn't all been completely erased. So also very interesting is that this Abu Simbel site is actually near the border with Sudan. And, you know, it's these famous massive rock temples that was actually built by Ramesses II. So we can see, you know, and understand as well why there is the fight as well to take over Sudan, and why, you know, the RSA, the Rapid Support Force, I think they're called, why they are being financed by the Arab world, because the Arab world wants to, you know, they've already taken over all of North Africa, and now they're pushing down further into Africa because they want to take over Sudan, because the richness of the history in that region is such that they want to claim it. I look at it. Woo. And you know, these monuments here that we're looking at, they're just fragments in the scale of things, because, you know, what I've got here is a piece of artwork that was done by someone called Milmore. And what he's done is kind of tried to recreate what Luxor and Thebes probably would have looked like in ancient times. And this would have been like the ancient city of Egypt. These would have been, you know, the ancient city of Egypt during its golden age. And, you know, when we're looking at some of these monuments, these would have been just little tiny monuments in the front of some of these buildings. And so look at the scale, you know, of the city that was built during these times. And this is modern day Luxor, and it's on the eastern half of the ancient Thebes. And this is housing the famous Luxor temple and the Karnak temple. Wow, wow, wow. This is, you know, evidence of what, this is from the evidence that we've got, an idea of what the city would have looked like, where the great temples would have been, the great walls would have been, the spiritual waters where they would have been located. And what we have here in this image is a facade of a small temple at Abu Simbel in southern Egypt. And this is also known as the Temple of Hathor and Nefertari. And it's located about 100 meters northeast of the Great Temple of Ramesses II. And there are a total of 6 colossal statues that are about 10 meters high. And these statues are of the royal couple and actually represent Ramesses himself and Queen Nefertari. Now, Ramesses II, he reigned about 1279 through to 1213 BC. And his wife, Queen Nefertari, she reigned 1290 to about 1255 BC. And the reason why this is quite exceptional is because it was unusual in Egyptian art or Kemetian art for a king to actually, you know, have his queen in a huge monument like this at the same height as himself, you know, carved into stone. So this is showing us that he actually viewed his wife Nefertari as in so important that she deserved to have a statuette the same height as him next to him as well. And this is apparently, you know, such a beautiful love story that's written in the hieroglyphics about this couple, that it represents one of the most famous and well-documented love stories in ancient Egyptian history. And there's all sorts of depictions of Queen Nefertari, from very pale white looking down to the dark complexion that we see here. And I got this from a newspaper article, and it was entitled "Mummified Remains Identified as Queen Nefertari, Pharaoh Ramesses II's royal spouse." And this is her here. And she was a great royal wife. And it's said that she held enormous influence, immense influence in her position as the wife of Ramesses II. And she was so important to the ancient world. That's why they've basically immortalized her as well. And you can see her in the artwork and in the monuments. And she's even got her own temple at Abu Simbel. And so sometimes we see Nefertari as the goddess Hathor. And when you see her as a goddess Hathor, she's the one that would be depicted with that cow horn on her head and the solar disk, the round solar disk in the middle. And in these statues, there are some smaller knee-high figures that are standing beside these huge monuments. And they believe that these smaller ones represent the couple's children. And this temple, it said, was constructed around about the 13th century BCE during the 19th dynasty. And, you know, it served numerous purposes. So Thomas there was asked about this temple. It suggested that this particular temple, these temples here, symbolize the divine partnership between Ramesses II that he had with the sun gods, and Nefertari that she had with Hathor. And so it was about the power of the pharaohs. Like the other neighboring temples, it was intended to showcase the pharaoh's absolute power and eternal legacy to the region of Nubia. And it's one of the few instances in ancient Egyptian history where a ruler has dedicated a temple specifically to his wife. And it's a beautiful, beautiful story. So one for you to look into some more, family. Here we have, again, a colossal statue of Pharaoh Ramesses II, as I said, also known as Ramesses the Great. And this one here is located in the Great Court of the Karnak Temple complex in Luxor. And this statue represents Ramesses II in his Osirian pose. Some people call it, what's that film they had the other day? Where they had that Osirian pose, you know? What is the name of it? You can tell me in the chat. Where they had that pose, yeah, the Osirian pose, with his arms crossed over his chest. And in one hand, he's holding the crook, and in the other, the frail. Yeah, so they got the crook and the frail, which is also known as the rod and the staff. And these are traditional symbols of royalty and authority and divinity in Kemet. Now, when I found out that, you know, you see how you can change names of things and totally just throw people. But when I realized that the crook and the frail is also known as the rod and the staff, what's that say to you? We'll come back to that. Let's see. Yes, sister Betty, rise up. Black Panther. Yes, in the Black Panther movie, they used the Osirian pose throughout that. And, basically, this was a symbol of royalty. It was a symbol of divinity back then in Kemet. And, Ramesses was looked upon as a god, and this god was holding a rod and staff to comfort his people. So he's wearing his Neem's headdress, and he's got that double crown. You can't see, it's just off the top of the picture there. And that's showing that he was the ruler of both Upper and Lower Egypt. And you've got the smaller figure down here that's standing, in between his legs there, at his feet. And, that's identified as his daughter, who later, it says, became the great royal wife, Princess Bentana, known as Bint Tahana as well. And this dates back to about the 13th century BCE. The statue was originally carved from some pink granite, and it stands approximately 11 meters tall. Wow, about 11 meters tall. Was intended to glorify the pharaoh's own divine kinship. And so we're looking at an era here where the pharaohs themselves were, almost worshipped as gods and looked upon as, maybe priests were looked upon as ones who had this divine connection, this unique connection to the source, to the godly powers, to the heavens. And like many Egyptian monuments, these statues later would have been usurped by later rulers, and some of them would have added their own names, would have tried to erase the names of the earlier rulers, and it's included Ramesses the fifth, Ramesses the sixth, and the original priest Penindagen the first, like many Egyptian monuments and statues. This is the sort of thing that they did. But anyway, these statues actually stand in the first courtyard of the temple of Amun at Karnak, and it's positioned just in front of the entrance to the second pylon. And so, this is a familiar pattern that we see, these huge monuments, that's at the entrance of these temples. And it's like you're going into a sacred place, and these great monuments that represent, the priests are going to protect you, like the Buddhas, it would have been similar to people who go in and they have the huge Buddhas at the entrance, and all of what that is meant to represent: peace, tranquility, safety, guardianship, etc., etc. So let's look at some more of the Egyptian treasures. This is King Tut. He was the boy king of Egypt, and here is, artist's impression of what they think he may have looked like. This is the front of his funerary mask, and here is the back of his funerary mask, and this is in the museum in Cairo at the moment. And Betty's pointed out that our sister queen was actually playing chess. Yeah, it definitely was a very early board game, and it does look like chess. These look like chess pieces indeed. And so what does that tell us? It tells us that our ancestors invented the chess board game, and that it was invented thousands of years ago as well. Rise up, Sister Adawa, for that. We got SAS Bridge in the house as well, saying peace to everyone. Welcome, welcome. We've got Papa Cheesy in the house as well. Welcome, welcome, Papa Cheesy. Great to have you in the house. And Kwame's letting Mama Adawa know that jealousy was too much for our enemies. Yes. And Sister Adawa says they're trying to remove our history, but that is like trying to remove oxygen with your bare hands. Yes, that's the difficulty that they will have. Papa Cheesy says, how sad, all by design, divide and conquered family. They know our story. Sad to say, a lot of melanated Black and brown people don't know our story. But time has changed. where a lot of Gen Z generation are waking up. Indeed, indeed, Papa Cheesy, definitely. Brother Kwame says that Africans design and build statues as a place of worship and schools as well. Keep your comments coming in. Thank you so, so much. So King Tut, that's short for Tutankhamun, and he was the last pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. And look at the intricacies and the detail and the colors in this funerary mask and what it symbolizes, you know, and represents as well. Wow, wow, wow. So what kind of lifestyle were the kings of Kemet kind of living? Well, this boy king, this is his golden chair, and it's crafted like a masterpiece. I mean, we're looking at a civilization, as I was saying, it's just so highly advanced. They mastered everything that they did. Look at the level of luxury. Look at the detail. Look at the symbolism. Look at the power that this chair, you know, is just exuding. So, you know, what does this tell us about the craftsmanship of our ancient Egyptian ancestors? And if our ancestors were able to craft magnificently beautiful pieces like this, gold-plated pieces, you know, inlaid with, this was advanced metallurgy. You know, we have to get these skills back again. Look at the intricacies, you know, and the detail in the carvings, the symmetry. Look at the colors that they use, the mathematical precision, you know, the use of color, glass, and pigments. If this is showing us the knowledge that our ancestors had of chemicals, the knowledge that our ancestors had of mathematics to be able to do the calculations to do all of this, the knowledge that they had, you know, of using the metals and the colors. Wow. And look at the lion head as well on the armrest of these chairs, and the lion claws down the bottom, the artistry, the geniusness of our ancestors. Look at how they use their imagination and to be able to capture, you know, these wonderful stories, even on the chair. You know, look at the sun ray, you know, the rays of sun giving life, you know, to the people, to the king and the queen. Look at the goddess Hathor with her horn and a round disc, you know, above her head. I mean, these are beautiful, beautiful pieces. So we were specialists in everything that we did. We had to be an organized people to be able to have these massive cities and to have these industries that were creating these powerful pieces with all this symbolism, you know, engraved all over it as well. Look at, these are masterpieces, you know, and we don't even know the names of these artists. Just imagine. Look at the detail. Look at the detail on these chairs, on the images that are coming through here, you know. These were not basic societies. These were not uncivilized societies. These were societies that were masters in what they did. They mastered materials. They were visionaries. They knew how to bring those visions to life. They were skilled in using the metals, the pigments, the colors. You know, wow, wow, wow. Just these thrones alone, family, really tell us a lot about ancient Kemet. And it tells us that our ancestors built for and really believed in the afterlife. And even though they were living a life of luxury and they were, you know, masters at the way that they ran their kingdoms and their empires, and even though their influence stretched around the globe, and look at the objects of daily life, you know, that they use, you know, and so right across the board, they were living examples of excellence, yeah, living examples of excellence in the daily objects that they use, in their belief systems. You know, remember, all of this is built on thousands of years of knowledge. Yeah. And you can see that our ancestors, they designed with purpose, they crafted with precision, and they built to reflect both the earthly authority and the divine connection that they had to the cosmos, to the sun, to the higher ether. And this was the lifestyle of African royalty. You know, look at royalty today. Look at royalty today. I mean, they just can't walk. They're imposters, which is why they can't walk in the shoes of and live up to the lifestyle of our royals. And that's why they don't want us to know about our ancient royals, and because it would tell us that these royals today are not the real royals, because they are just not living up to what we as Africans perceive royalties to be about. It's about luxury, it's about expertise, it's about, you know, managing and running your society, you know, to a level of mastery that you can't even imagine. We can't even imagine today. And I was just in awe and admiration at the masterpieces of these designs and what they symbolize, and the fact that they were used as everyday objects by those African royals, and what all of this even means today, and what it's telling us about them today, and what it all depicts. It's beautiful. I just love it. And yeah, these figures here are often depicted as a king and queen. Yeah, and they're showing, you know, that they have a genuinely beautiful understanding between them. There's harmony, there's love, there's maybe intimacy, you know, a beautiful African king and with his African queen, his elegant African queen. Look at her gown, look at her outfit, you know, what she's wearing. There's this whole divinity about them as well. And this is how royalty was presented back then. They were elevated to another level, and it was central, you know, to the cosmic order of things as well. So, you know, even just looking at this chair, we're not just looking at a chair. This chair is a statement of power, you know, refinement, mastery, you know. This is a throne that was in the royal court of the ancient Kemetians, and it's telling us that those ancient Kemetian royals didn't live a simple life at all. Hey, they created an environment for themselves where even through art, even through the furniture, there was all this symbolism of divinity, spirituality, the oneness with the cosmos, and the craftsmanship during those times. Wow, wow, wow. There's a couple more chairs here. Just again, look at the intricacies of the design of these African masterpieces. Look at them. Oh, wow, look at the lion head on this one again, and the claws, and the similar image there that we've seen before. Here's another chair. Look at the design under here. I mean, even this design here is not too dissimilar to what you see in some of the cathedrals, is it not? Just, you know, look at the intricacies and how interesting the shapes and the designs are. The arches, the straight lines, the symmetry between the two. Beautifully, beautifully done. Look at the feet on these chairs. And this is all, you know, gold gilded wooden chairs. It's made of wood, and then it's got the gold gild over it, and then all the color pigments that they use. Phenomenal. I mean, all over Africa, our African brothers and sisters are still carving masterpieces, but they don't have access to the gold as they did back then to be able to cover, you know, their masterpieces in gold as they did back in the days. And we use gold a lot. Look at these images here. These are of an extraordinary funerary. And look at the craftsmanship, again, you know, of ancient Kemet. And this is where death was treated with the same precision, the same luxury as life was here. So here on this shrine, we've got Anubis. Remember, we looked at, no, we didn't look at Anubis, did we? We looked at, yeah, we looked at the bull. Anubis that represented the bull figure, but this one here is a jackal head, and this symbolizes guardianship, protection of the dead. You know, those of you who've got pet dogs, you know, like I do, they're all about protection, all about protection. You know, they'll sit outside or lie down, or they'll position themselves like that outside that gate, outside that door, and nobody who's not supposed to pass that gate can pass that gate while they're there. They're about protection. And so I can understand why they've used, you know, this jackal-headed beast as a guardian to symbolize the protection of the dead. And here on this side, we've got this elaborately decorated golden shrine covered in hieroglyphics and, you know, these divine creatures. Here it is blown up here so that you can see it a bit more closely. And look at the detail, you know, on the garment that this person, this divine figure is wearing as well. And all of this is reflecting, you know, a deep spiritual belief about the afterlife. You know, every surface, everything is intentional, carved, inscribed, polished to perfection. Imagine, and this was made like thousands of years ago, thousands of years ago. And, you know, it wasn't any rubbish that they were burying with our ancestors. These were beautiful works of art, you know, with exquisitely designed details that were communicating stories and symbolizing the religion and the spiritual belief system, and this fusion of art and religion and spirituality and advanced craftsmanship all coming together to demonstrate, the greatness of the civilization, the extent to which we had mastered the material wealth and could express ourselves spiritually in ancient times, thousands of years ago. You know, here we have a statuette from the House of Eternity. This is King Tutankhamun, and this piece is now in the Cairo Museum. It is also a gilded wooden statue, and he represents the god Ptah, and it's a reflection of the refined artistry and spiritual depth as well of ancient Kemet. So you've got this golden surface, and it's not just decoration, it's communicating a powerful message. It's symbolizing divinity, eternity, the afterlife, the flesh of the gods, you know. And look at his calm, serene look on his face, you know. He's just saying, and it's all, yeah, he's representing balance, order, peace, a connection with the outerverse, and a very centrally balanced individual. And he's got his blue headdress on here. They think that represents the cosmic connection and the heavens. And here you can see him holding the Ankh, which, as we know, represents the key of life. And it's signifying the external existence beyond death. So all of our ancestors had this belief in life after death. And that's what the Ankh as a key of life represented as well, the external existence beyond death. And, you know, again, when you look at the detail, you know, on this garment, how layered it is. Look at beautiful. One time I was looking at it and wondering if it represented the scales of a fish, you know. What are your thoughts on that, family? Or is this just, you know, the design of the gown that this god is wearing, the god Ptah is wearing? But is it just a layered garment? I can see from the sleeves that it appears to be a layered garment. Or what do you think it could be represented? But again, when you look at the precision of the carving, the detail of the carving, you know, another masterpiece, revealing again the mastery that our ancestors had of the materials that they were working with. And so, you know, with all of that said, you know, look at the false beard that they tended to wear as well. So these are not just statutes, but these are spiritual statements. It's expressing life after death, immortality, you know, and in one unified life, death, life after death, the key to life, you know, authority, power. Wow, all wrapped up in there. Now let's take a look at this miniature coffin that held the organs of King Tut. And this is a canopic coffinet of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, which was used to store the king's internal organs during the mummification process. So the pharaoh here is depicted as Osiris. You see he's got that famous Assyrian pose as well, the god of the afterlife and underworld. And in this coffin, miniature coffin, you can see that the figure is holding the two sacred emblems of pharaonic authority, the krupp, that they call the heka, yeah, and that is a staff with the curved top, and that is similar to a shepherd's staff, and it's meant to symbolize kingship, leadership, and guidance, and it reflects the pharaoh's role as a shepherd to guide its people, providing them with the care and protection. And then you've got the rods, you've got the hook, and you've got the staff, and a krupp. Oh, sorry, darling. Sorry, my. So the rod and the staff. So this is the rod with these things hanging on it. You know, I suppose they would use that to hit the sheep. You know, get in line, get in place. You know, that's the rod, and then the staff as well. And so they had different names for it: a krupp and a frau, also known as a rod and staff. So, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Surely goodness and mercy. Yes. When I read that, I'm like, what? Is that what they're holding? And is that what it represents? You know, I knew obviously that it was a symbol of like kingship and leadership and power. But what I didn't know was the name of the krupp and the falir. And only to discover, they've got other names for it as well, like the krupp is called the hika, and the falir is also known as the nekakaha, yeah? And so you've got this nekakaha, and you've got this krupp that they call the heka, but it's also known as the rod and the staff. Symbolizing authority, discipline, and dominion. And, you know, it's just reinforcing the power that the pharaoh had during their lifetime and also in the afterlife. And so, you know, when you see them with their hands crossed across their chest, quite often in some of these little coffinettes and these statuettes, you'll see that, but the rod and the staff is missing. Yeah, you see them with their hands crossed, but the rod and the staff is missing. But here, we've got the rod and the staff, or the krupp and the falir, however you pronounce it, flail, F-L-A-I-L, flail. Fea. Anyway, that's also known as the rod and the staff. And in Kemetian terms, as I said, it represented guidance, balance, and power. And together they actually embodied the dual principles of the ruler's duty. So it was the duty of the ruler to guide, but also to nurture their subjects, and at the same time maintain authority and order through discipline. Wow, wow, wow. And again, look at the detail and the craftsmanship and the mastery of these little miniature coffinettes, things that held the pharaoh Tutankhamun's internal organs. Because as you know, during the mummification process, they take out the organs and they put them separately. And to think that, you know, these archaeologists have got hold of all of that. They even have the internal organs of our ancient kings and queens. Wow, wow, wow. These figures here represent another powerful image of individuals who were both human and divine. And look, you can see they've got their hands crossed in that Osirian pose. Her rod and staff is missing, but in this one you can see that they're holding the staff. And, you know, these again are carefully crafted figurines. You can see the cobra that represents that power and leadership in here. You see they've carefully carved, you know, the braided wig that, you know, this goddess would have been wearing. And so they've carved her with her braided wig on. And, you know, back then it would have reflected, you know, a very sophisticated hairstyle. It would have been part of their cultural identity. And this bold eyeline, the bold coil eyeline as well, was part of their cultural identity, and the thick eyebrows, you know, again, it was revealing and speaking of a standard of beauty. And they've captured that, you know, aesthetically, you know, in these monuments. And you can see also that they've got these beautiful neck pieces, huge neck pieces, usually made out of gold, intricately designed. The symmetry is in there, you know, the inks and the pigments that they had. And here, again, beautiful evidence of, you know, exceptionally talented individuals who did the wood carvings, who did the pigmenting, the makeup, the cosmetics, the textile craftsmanship. All of this that we're seeing in the ornament is telling us of the different industries that actually existed thousands of years ago. Because, you know, there's nothing accidental about any of this. It was all deliberate, all purposeful, you know, every feature, every line, you know, every color that they used, the detail that they did to represent this pharaoh's wig, you know, all purposeful. And, you know, it's communicating to us status, identity, and, you know, a belief system, and the artistry that was preserving, you know, the identity of these greats. I mean, it's just phenomenal, phenomenal. You know, even today I was looking at the artwork of some great artists here on the continent, and our people are just so talented. The artistry, the craftsmanship, the creativity, the color scheme, the use of the minerals. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And we can see that, you know, these females were actually posing maybe for the artist or the sculptor. And yeah, these goddesses, basically represented the authority that went with them, and their rod and their staff. The fact that they're holding this as well, you know, showed that they had very powerful positions in society, and that they wore either these headdresses or these braided wigs. What do you think about that, family? Some of you think that these wigs and these braids are just a few generations old. They go back thousands of years. Numerous mummies, pharaohs have been buried with their braided wigs, thousands of years old, and they can be seen in some of these museums. So, you know, some of you like to cuss people, say, yo, you know, about braided hair and braided wigs and extensions and stuff like that. Do you see that this is part of our culture, and a culture that goes back thousands of years before there was even a white person on the scene? You know, and so when we, you know, get carried away sometimes, we have to remember that we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know, the bathwater is our culture, our tradition, thousands of years of culture, of hairstyling, and we just want to banish it. Do we really? I'm going to do a whole separate session on the culture of African hair, and this kind of thing is going to be in it. You can see the rod and staff is missing here. This is a coffin that was prepared for an individual who was both royal and sacred. And you can see that, you know, this coffin again was crafted with precision to preserve the identity of the person beyond death. And you can see here by the top of this, this little bit of gold gilt here, that, you know, the face originally was covered in gold. And you can see the intricacy to represent the cane row. Some might say this could even look like twists or locks or plaits. Yeah, definitely coming down to represent a hairstyle that is cropped, you know, straight on the shoulders as well. So this was a powerful, must have been a very powerful African woman to have had, you know, her image chiseled away and crafted in this way to be preserved even after death. And we can see that this African woman, she wore her hair tightly braided as well. And at the time, it would have been, you know, part of the high culture for the pharaohs, for the Egyptian royalty. And, you know, when you've got royalty, you know, dressing in a particular way, it's not surprising that, you know, ordinary citizens would want to copy the styles of the royals. And so this was a deliberately structured piece, and it's symbolic of status and order and, you know, the greatness of this individual. And this is a richly decorated broad collar. They love these broad collars. We just wear little necklaces these days, but during the days of our pharaohs and great ones, did them collar go all the way around their shoulder and up round to the back as well. And you can see all the vibrant colors in there. And it just tells us about the industries that must have existed, the colors that our people were working with, the yellows, the blues, the reds, the greens, you know, the turquoise. Look at all the colors that we knew and were created and were using in our paintwork back then. The mekalgari, the beadwork, you know, this was representing, you know, divinity. And, you know, you've got the falcon motif here as well at the front, and you can see it from the side here as well. And this is, you know, connecting this figure here to Horus, signaling a goddess of protection and kingship. And although she's a goddess, you can see she's got this false beard here representing kingship. And so every detail is intentional here as well. And it's a lot of spiritual significance encoded in here. And we have to have these roundtable discussions really to begin to understand what the spiritual coding is in all of this. We know it's expressing power, guidance, you know, guardianship of the people, because they had the rod and staff here. And again, this was about identity, and it was preserving the identity of the individual for eternity. But, you know, we got these destructive ones among us. And this is really interesting because even though they'd prepared this for a woman, according to, you know, geneticists, they said that it was a male mummy that was actually found inside the tomb. And they believe that that male mummy to be that of Pharaoh Akhenaten, originally Amenhotep the fourth. But they're saying that the identity is still a bit obscure and is still, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty around it because, you know, it's considered to be one of the great mysteries why they created this female coffin, but put the remains of Pharaoh Akhenaten, Amenhotep, inside. And so this is what they call the mystery coffin. And this was discovered in the Valley of the Kings in 1907. And it was controversial then, and it's controversial today as well. And they say that, you know, the face of the coffin was deliberately disfigured, and the royal cartouches, which contain the name of the occupant, were erased or abraded. And this was part of a damnatio memoir. This means a systematic attempt to erase the identity of the individual from history. So were they trying to erase the name and the identity of Amen, King Akhenaten, Amenhotep? We know we get Amen from Amun Hotep, because, you know, he tried to elevate himself, didn't he, as a god. Maybe people, you know, revolted, because there were some revolts during that time about him, a male, presenting himself as God, because, you know, there were those who believed in God the spirit, not God in the physical. And that definition and those two distinctions, they split the churches or the religious systems right down the middle. You know, one sect believing in, you know, God to be spirit, and the other believing that God manifested himself in the physical in the name of Jesus. And so that split the church down the middle. But yeah, many Egyptologists, they actually agree that this coffin represents Akhenaten, but we can see it was originally created for a queen, and they think it could be either Queen Kaya or perhaps Queen Tai originally, but then it was adapted and used for the male burial of Tutankhamun. Interesting. Pharaoh Akhenaten, Amenhotep. So this is the lid of the wooden coffin, gold-plated sarcophagus, and it's currently on display in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. And so, you know, we've seen the golden chair that the royals sat in. We see the way they dress. We see the kind of designs of their outfits, their gold collars. I mean, what did they wear on their feet? Well, here, from King Tutankhamun's tomb on exhibition, we can see a pair of solid gold funerary sandals with matching toe caps. And these are toe caps are for the individual toes. Imagine. Wow, wow, wow. And they were discovered in the tomb of Tutankhamun, who's they think that lived around 1332 to 1323 BC. And these artifacts were found directly on the feet of the pharaoh's mummy when the British archaeologists uncovered it back in 1922. And so these sandals, it said, are made of hammered and soldered gold plates and ribbons, and crafted to mirror the design of the common sandals of the time, typically made from papyrus and palm fiber. So clever. Imagine, wearing slippers that was made from papyrus and palm fiber. You were in touch with nature even as you walked. Anyway, these gold toe stools, they were placed on each individual toe of the mummy to ensure that they remained intact. Wow, during the mummification process and for eternity. So what does that symbolize? What does that tell us about these Egyptian pharaohs and the royal life? Solid gold sandals with solid gold toe caps as well. My. Very interesting. Here's some more sandals. These were actually found in the tomb of Tutankhamun, and he loved his footwear. And we can see, look at the detail on these sandals. Look at the images, look at the stories that it's conveying. Again, it's telling us that the man who wore these sandals, he loved sandals, he loved style and fashion. He hardly wore them because they still look brand new. And again, it's representing the fine gold work and the intricate inlays, reflected all in the luxury of the craftsmanship of the day. And also it would have been worn probably only by people of elite status. But look at these beautiful sandals. And we can even find sandals designed like this today. They won't have all of these wonderful artistic work on it. But, similar design you could even find today. Wow. Again, all the images engraved in here and this design would be telling us that we're looking at the wearer as someone who had status, someone who was powerful, someone who loved, the finer things in that art could produce as well. And that, the craftsmanships of the day was an exceptional standard. Wow, wow, wow. What a statement this is. So you can see, the art was carried through, to the politicians of the day, the leaders of the day, the spiritualists, the priests of the day. Look at all these as an example of their sandals. And I read somewhere that one of them had about 75 or so sandals. When people just love them shoes. So here we can see that even the footwear of our royals was actually declaring power, beauty, craftsmanship, the finer things in life. Wow. And this was created in a society that had built the skills and expertise of their people so that they could do this, create such beautiful pieces. Another beautiful piece, this is an ostrich feather ceremonial fan, and it's known as a flabiblion or a behet, and it belongs to Pharaoh Tutankhamun, and it was discovered in his tomb in the Valley of the Kings. It's made from wood, it's covered with sheets of gold, and it's intricately inlaid with colorful materials like lapis, lazuli, turquoise, and carnelian. and it has, symbolic significance as well. And it was more than just a fan, and more than just a practical object. It represented royal power. It represented divine protection. And the motion of the fan, as they were fanning the king, it was believed to provide the breath of life to the deceased king in the afterworld. And you can see, look, it's got these winged angels, these winged beings here, looking after the deceased in the afterworld. And this was like a ceremonial piece, a beautiful ceremonial fan. And this would have been carried in royal processions, and it would have signified the pharaoh's design status and authority. And wow, there's inscriptions on here. You can see there's inscriptions on the handle as well. And this will be communicating a story, probably a story about the king himself. We've got so much intricately woven into this masterpiece. Here's another masterpiece. Wow, wow, wow. And it's a ceremonial act. So it wouldn't have been used, for anything physical. It would have been used for ceremonial purposes. And it belonged to Pharaoh Ahmose I. And in his reign, we can see, the mastery of those craftsmen during those days. Look how beautiful this piece is. So this is a ceremonial act of Pharaoh Ahmose I, another masterpiece, and was discovered in the tomb of his mother, Queen Hotep. And it was actually never meant to be used for combat, but really just to serve as a powerful piece of royal propaganda to commemorate the liberation of Egypt from the foreign Hyksos rulers and the dawn of the new kingdom. And, this blade, as we can see, intricately inlaid with gold and electron, featuring several highly symbolic figures. It could be telling the story of the pharaoh striking down an enemy with his mace, and it could be depicting a classic Egyptian motif representing the king's role in restoring Mahat, divine order, by crushing the forces of chaos. And then there's, above the king's head here, you've got the god Heth, who holds the palm branch, signifying, millions of years. And this represents the wish for the pharaoh to reign and for his legacy to endure for eternity. Wow. You've got the winged griffin here as well. That's meant to represent the king as well. This is a mythical beast. And it's associated with the god Montu, symbolizing Ahmose's fierce military prowess. You see the royal cartouches on here as well. And it's containing the name as well of the throne and the birth name of Ahmose. Wow. And this is made of copper, gold, and cedar wood. Again, further reinforcing the wealth, the vast wealth of the kings in everything that they used. Wow. We have here, oh, I've done this one already, haven't I? But let me just conclude on this beautiful piece here. So in conclusion, we've got the high culture of ancient Kemet. And it was a civilization that was defined by an extraordinary example of art, engineering, and profoundly ordered worldview that influenced the entire Mediterranean basin, stretched also across to Asia and as far as Europe in terms of its sophistication, its holistic system, its religion, the science, the governance, and they're all seamlessly integrated under this concept of Mahat, the divine principle of cosmic balance and harmony. And at the heart of the Kemetian sophistication was their mastery of monumental buildings as well, structures. And while other contemporary cultures were, building in wood or mud brick, and there's nothing wrong with that, these Kemetians had harnessed stone to achieve a state of eternal permanence. The engineering required to construct the Great Pyramids complex and the hypostyle halls of Karnak reveals a society with an advanced grasp of mathematics, logistics, organizational management, and this sophistication extended to fine arts. Egyptian artisans had developed a unique canon of proportions and a vibrant palette of pigments, such as the Egyptian blue, the world's first synthetic pigment, which demonstrated early chemical expertise. Furthermore, Kemet's intellectual culture was unrivaled. They were among the first to develop a complex writing system, hieroglyphics, which served as both a practical tool for a sprawling bureaucracy and a sacred medium for religious philosophy. Their scribal class was highly educated, managing a society that utilized a 365-day solar calendar, performed delicate surgeries recorded in medical papyrus, and understood the movement of the stars. This intellectual depth made Kemet the cradle of wisdom for later civilizations. Greek philosophers and Roman emperors alike traveled to Kemet to study its mysteries and prestige. The aesthetic and material culture was also represented the pinnacle of ancient luxury. So as we've seen in the intricate jewelry, the gold work of Tutankhamun's tomb, the Egyptian craftsmanship, the craftsmanship that they possessed, the technical finesse, the methodology, and the lapidary work that remains difficult to replicate today. Every object, from a common cosmetic jar to a royal sarcophagus, was just imbued with symbolic meaning and intentional design. Ultimately, the Kemetians, stroke Egyptians, presented a culture that was both static and dynamic, deeply conservative in its traditions, yet incredibly innovative in its execution. It was a civilization that looked towards the afterlife, not with fear, but with a meticulous preparation that reflected their deep love for the beauty of life. And this unwavering pursuit of perfection and order is what allowed the Kemetian culture to endure for over 3,000 years, and I believe much, much longer, leaving a legacy of sophistication that still defines our concept of civilization until today. I'm going to stop there. I do have more to the insights of our Egyptian culture, but my, I hope you were as blown away as I was and as I am about the mastery of the work of our ancient ancestors. So family, thank you so much for joining me. Big up yourself too, Brother Kwame. He says, Mama Shanice, big up to you. Asheo, Papa Cheesy Way, great to have you in the house. Oh, Mama Adwa, great to have you here as well. Peace and blessings back at you. You know, where's our sister Karen? You still in the house? Asante origin story said they traveled from the east, yeah, and Western Africa. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much, everybody who has stayed with me in the chat. It's been absolutely awesome, really awesome, being able to present to you today. I certainly hope that you've gained a lot from the presentation. I certainly gained a lot from actually doing the research. And yeah, it's a joy to share it with you. Brother Kwame Ossi's in the house. He says this, let me see if I can get that out of the way. Yeah, this is similar in Ashanti culture. The footwear one wears symbolizes the status one is, be it Ashanti, Asante Queen Mother, Asante linguists, Asante ceremonial drummers, dancers, etc. Yeah, I know you've got a beautiful culture there, and I will be, you know, in a future episode, turning my attention to the Ghanaian culture, the Ashanti culture, you know, its language, the dress, you know, it's beautiful, beautiful, the hidden symbolism in the materials. Wow, wow, wow. Rise up, Brother Kwame. Good to have you in the house. Family, just to let you know, I will be live on the Big G Galaxy Alfiri Radio this coming Saturday. So do join me. I think I need to have a conversation again about this xenophobia in South Africa and a few other topics. So join me live on the Big G Galaxy Afiri Radio. Mama Adua say, you are right. Natural hair gives you power. Look at the power that our ancient pharaohs had. Yeah, look at that. Brother Kwame, sadly, our sisters, most of them are lost bleaching their hair or using fake wigs. Most of them are ashamed to show off their beautiful black locks and braids. No, it's not that at all. Brother Kwame, is not at all. It's culture, it's cultural pride, it's pride in our hair, our styles, you know, these braids are, we would have been doing it for thousands of years, thousands of years. And you want us to throw away thousands of years of culture? Do you really want us to throw away thousands of years of African woman beautification culture? Yeah, I know so many beautiful sisters who have done the sister locks and the natural locks, and the weight of the locks sadly has made them bald, you know, in the middle of their head and so many parts of their hair because the weight of it, you know, it just, and every time they get it redone, it just pulls out their hair. You want us to go around bald? You man them too bad and wicked. No go on and go yeah, sir. And I love natural hair. Those who've got the thick natural hair and can wear their hair natural, high five to you. I'm jealous. I'm jealous. Those of us who've got the fine hair, you know, I just saw, you know, I'll be part of the culture that we have been part of for thousands and thousands of years. So I know you will all really love the conversation that we have about hair, and that will be coming. But let's remember not to throw the baby out with the bath water. Yes, so my beautiful, beautiful brothers and sisters, I thank you so much. Karen says, what are the call numbers for the radio station? Okay, yeah, I mean, I actually have a Zoom number. People can actually Zoom in live, and you can Zoom in via video or you can Zoom in via audio. And I don't have the Zoom details with me right now. Brother Kwame Ossi, you're a regular listener. Do you have the Zoom details? Are you able to post the Zoom details for my show? Actually, I might be able to find it in my WhatsApp. One moment. Get your pens ready, family. Let me, before I log off, let me give you the Zoom details for Galaxy Afiri. It's on Zoom, so I should be able to search for it here. Get your pens ready. Let's find Zoom. and see if it will come up. And I'll try and post it in the chat as well. So the community talk show is going to be from 10 a.m. British summertime, from 10 a.m. through to 1 p.m. British summertime. And the Zoom ID is 840. Let me write it in here. Zoom ID is 840 6380 6380 4711 4711. Okay, and then you'll need the passcode. Yeah, you'll need the passcode, and the passcode is 890320. Okay, copy that, family, and you can actually join us live and direct so that we can have the conversations that we need to be having. We started a series of discussions on reparations, and we were looking at the shocking response of the United Kingdom and others to the call for reparations to be recognized as the greatest crime ever committed against humanity. We had our special guests, our brother Cecil Gutsmore, and we're going to be continuing that conversation. But we also need to have the conversation about what's happening in South Africa. I don't know what's wrong with not all, but some of our brothers and sisters in South Africa. I think there's a paid element in there, and this paid element is getting a lot of publicity, and they are being allowed to even commit murder, to cause violence and destruction against other Africans. And we have some African brothers and sisters, when they're given a job to do by the white man, they take it to another level. They take it to another level. Anyway, I know I'm well over time, but let's have the conversation about what's going on in South Africa. Yes, Brother Kwame, I see that the Black woman has always had a key role in African societies. It is only because of Islam and Christianity the Black woman has been downgraded. You are so right. You mean, Brother Kwame, as I've looked through the history, I can see the women have been inventors, from the foods to the agriculture to the cooking, the pots, the pans, the jewelry, the accessories, the makeup, the materials, the weaving. I mean, the women, the African women, we really have been downgraded. And that's intentional, because if we were allowed to flourish to the levels that we are capable of, hey, this world would be a different place, it would be a different place. Oh, there's so many wonderful messages that I didn't see when I was looking at my phone that I'm now seeing, looking directly into YouTube. I want to thank you so, so much. I'm going to be out of here now. I'm well over time, and the longer I go on for, the less people want to watch the shows. And so let me duck out here. Please support by sharing. Please support by posting these videos in your family chats, in your WhatsApp groups. Please support by subscribing to the channel as well. Sister Shanice out of here for now. It's been a pleasure and a privilege. We're going to continue in Egypt next strong. One love, family.